Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome one and all to the Defiant Takes Football Show. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at TheMaxDean, and I'm back with Kyron Samuels at Kyron Samuels on Twitter. Whew, we made it through another week of NFL football, and tonight we're back to talk about the biggest games from the weekend. I feel tired because watching that last game was brutal. I mean, we're just watching guys get hurt all over the place. It was a marathon of a game. It was like well over 3.5 hours, or at least a little over 3.5 hours. It was a long game, and it was just tough to watch. Man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I tweeted earlier, but I said it's still incredible entertainment, but this is probably the worst night of football I've ever seen in my life. If you talk about the first game with the Saints and the Panthers, and then into this game, it was just some bad football being played tonight. But it made for some entertaining finishes, so I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I'm not really pleased with the doubleheader on Monday night, especially now that they've condensed the start times to within an hour of each other, because I love so much getting individual highlighted feature games where I don't have to be distracted by anything else going on. You know what I mean? I can just watch that one game live, really get into it. And look, I watch as many games as I can during the normal Sunday 1 p.m. Eastern slot, but it's chaotic, right? And I have to go back and watch most of those games just to really have a good feel for it. And so I love primetime games. So when I watch the two Monday night games, I find myself just kind of ignoring the one that's less interesting unintentionally.
Right.
I want to veto that, right? I'm all for more football, but just stack them on
Well,
top.
normally they're staggering by coast. Normally you get the early kind of West Coast start. You'll get like a Seattle game or a
Right.
49ers game, and that'll start at like 6 o'clock, or that started like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and you'll get the East Coast game, which would be later. Normally they used to do it very well, staggering it, but like you said, within an hour of each other, it doesn't make for a good viewing experience. But the bad game gets thrown on the iPad. That's my policy. Whichever one's less interesting, I'll throw that one on the iPad and leave the big one up on the TV. But yeah, I didn't really like it tonight, especially when the games were that close. It wasn't like they were great games, but they were close games very early on in that finish of the Panthers and the Saints game. So you definitely want to look at both as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I've got all the screens. I've got one here, and then the TV, and then another down here, and so I've got access. It's more just about attention span than anything. So,
Right.
We are going to talk about 6 games today. Normally we do 5, but with 2 Monday night games, we threw an extra one in there. So both Monday night games, the Sunday night game, and then 3 other games from the Sunday slate. I. I had kind of a bad feeling about the Jets going into the game yesterday, and this is really, we're not going to dive into it, but I think between yesterday and today, the Aaron Rodgers injury has properly set it, because you kind of you're riding off the high of the win from Monday night. You're kind of rolling through the week. You're like, what can they do? What can this defense do? And then you get into this game, and it's like, whew, man, like, this is rough, and this is the game. This is the kind of game where you really rely on a player like that to make the difference. And we don't really have to talk about it. I guess I just needed to get it off my chest, man, because
Right.
it's a lot of good quarterback play, and the Jets didn't have it. I'm not coming down hard on Wilson because he was notably better, but still, there's a large difference between the two. Whew. All right. Here we go. We're going to start with the most recent game and kind of work backwards. This is fresh in our mind. The Browns at Steelers on Monday Night Football. The Steelers come away with a win. And so we kind of formatted the conversation to give us a little bit more structure. And there are 3 main points that we're going to hit for all of the games that we talk about today. First one being the pivotal play from the game. And we can have different opinions on this, but I'm just going to present my personal opinion, and then you can come back with it however you like. But to me, the pivotal play from the Browns at the Steelers, there were so many that it could have been, but the one that I came down and settled on was the forced fumble, return for a touchdown. Highsmith comes in, knocks the ball out from Deshaun Watson. TJ Watt picks it up and scores. Now, there was a bunch of plays where it could have been, depending on how the game played out. But to me, the Steelers were struggling to move the ball. They had a couple of big plays that got them in scoring range, but they had 3 touchdowns tonight, and 2 of them were defensive, right? Like, this meant everything. If it was not for this, they would not have won. They would not have put themselves in the lead and forced the Browns to go down and try and score at the end of the game. So to me, that was the single most pivotal play, although I have a few other thoughts on, some key moments. So what did you think?
I think that was an extremely important play for sure. I think that was the momentum shift. Do I think it was probably like the game ender? Probably not. I think the Browns had a chance to go down there and take a lead and win the football game as an offense, as an offensive line. That's all you can ask for, really. I mean, it was a 4-point ball game. You got 4 minutes left, 5 minutes left, however much it was. You have a chance to go down there and win the game. But I think they feel much better about their chances to go win the game if their best player didn't have his leg shredded in half, but right before the halftime. I think that was the most pivotal play of the game, and it's for reasons that suck. We shouldn't. Hopefully, we won't have to see too many of these ever again. But I mean, it's the game we play. I mean, it's just a product of the sport. But seeing Nick Chubb go down, I think that was just the biggest moment of the game. I still think they finished that drive with a touchdown. I believe so. They still scored and got the 2-point conversion actually to go up by 4 points, but. The offense wasn't balanced after that. I mean, Nick Chubb was having a pretty big day already. He was, shredding that defense, and as the game goes on, that's when we see Nick Chubb at his best. Actually, third, fourth quarter, when the offensive line's leaning on you for the whole game, and you can really be balanced. And I think after that, the Browns were not very balanced at all. They had a couple big plays, but most of those plays were broken plays. That was Deshaun Watson making something happen and extending plays with his feet, or the reverse field with Jerome Ford that actually got stopped at the line of scrimmage, and he just kept the play alive and just hustled. And Deshaun Watson got up and had a lead block and kind of sprung him for a big gain. And other than that, within structure, we didn't see a lot of sustainable drives from the Cleveland Browns. And I think a lot of that was due to just not having Nick Chubb. So I think that was the biggest moment of the game. Biggest pivotal play. I mean, listen, I think those two are by far the 2 biggest moments. I think they go hand in hand, in my opinion, because had they had Nick Chubb, I don't think they're dropping back and doing play in action on 2nd and 10 or whatever it was. It was early down and they're doing play action. I just thought they went back to the well one too many times, and that's just a byproduct of not having Nick Chubb. So I think both of those situations actually go hand in hand, and that was the pivotal plays.
For a long time, I had that slotted in as the pivotal play, particularly because, like you said, after he went down, they really couldn't get anything going. I mean, he was the driving force of their offense, and everything else was just kind of accentuating that, and just, a few extra yards here, a first down conversion there. But he was the one, and he didn't have a crazy long run, so these aren't skewed stats. But before he went down, he had 6.4 yards per carry average, right? And that was what was keeping them ahead of the sticks. He got hurt. I took that out eventually because they did start moving the ball more. They had a big run from Jerome Ford, and even though that did skew his stats quite a bit, he ended up having a few good runs after that. Amari Cooper for 90 yards receiving, David Njoku for almost 50 receiving, and they had some other things going, so I decided that wasn't, even though it was pivotal, they were still winning after that. And so that's why I went back, and I just don't think that the Steelers pull this win out if it is not for that play. So I definitely agreed with you for a long time, and I said, I think this just, if it was not for this play, Steelers don't win. Simple as that. And I thought the Browns still had the possibility to pull it out afterwards. So I do agree with you. But like I said, there was a lot of moments. So then breaking it down into the story of the first half. So I kind of split it into the first half and second half here. And for me, sloppy offense and turnovers was the story of the first half from both sides. I mean, they're just trading turnovers back and forth. Neither team looked really on point, aside really from Nick Chubb rushing the ball. Steelers fumbling the ball on, I think he fumbled on a punt. No, there was just one from Olszewski, and he made a mistake though, which ended up getting the ball ended up going over his head, and so they got the ball to start poorly on a punt return, which is his primary job. Then he fumbled the ball on offense, and then Deshaun Watson throws the pick six, and there's fumbles all over the place. Watson had another one later beyond the first half, but yeah, so it was ugly. Nobody really could get anything going, and the Steelers honestly put themselves in really good position just because of that early turnover and score. What was your takeaway as the general theme of the first half?
I think the physicality. I mean, it's AFC North game. It's a division game. It's Monday night game, obviously. I'm not sure. I believe that was the home opener for the. That was the home. Was that the home opener for?
No,
the
they played
Steelers
the Niners at home
Okay.
last week.
But so first night game of the year then, and you have all the emotions and obviously like hey, it's been pretty vocal. The Deshaun Watson addition and how people play against that guy and that team, and they've been pretty vocal this offseason. The Browns, that is, about being a new offense and being much improved, and the AFC North going through Cleveland. It's been pretty vocal. It's been a lot of talk. So I believe there was just a lot of emotion early in the first half, and you saw it on the field. Some really big hits, some guys putting their body on the line. I know people were talking about the hit on Chubb and thinking that it was dirty, and I'm just like, I don't understand what people are saying there, because listen, have you seen people try to tackle Nick Chubb up high? It doesn't work out very well for almost anybody. I mean, he's coming in to try to make a play, but in doing that, he hurt himself as well. Like, he was out on the play. He had to come out of the game for a few snaps, and I'm just looking at all the guys throw their body on the line. Denzel Ward that hit against Gunnar Olszewski, like you said, like, these guys were just putting it out there. Now, was the product good? Absolutely not. But these guys were playing so hard. So I really did appreciate the physicality and how much they were playing. That was the biggest story of the first half for me.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because that was my story of the second half, because I just put violence, because it got so brutal as the game progressed. And I'm not saying that it wasn't there in the first half, but I just felt the overall sloppiness of the play was worse. And then in the second half, it tightened up. There were less overall turnovers. I mean, definitely a big time one with Watson fumbling and then the ball being returned for a touchdown. But guys are just getting hurt. Guys are getting knocked out of the game left and right. I mean, Fitzpatrick came out again after he made the shoestring tackle on Jerome Ford as he was sprinting down the field for his 70, 69-yard, whatever it was, run. But there was just more than that. I mean, who else came out? There was a bunch of guys that got just hurt throughout the course of the game. Landon Roberts had to come out. Man, there was
both teams lost their best player, which is like the crazy
Greg
thing.
Newsome.
Like, he's just Greg Newsome. But seeing like Chubb and make it go out, like that was just like it's very difficult, man. The story. Go ahead. I don't know if you finished making your point about the story of the second half.
I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
It was brutal. They were just hitting each other hard, and it was a long game too. So it just that kind of made it feel worse, because I usually a football game is like 3-ish hours, and that one really was stretching out there for a night game. I'm sure those guys were pretty beat up, but they fought till the bitter end.
Right. Yeah, man. Like, probably for me, like my takeaway from the second half was just the defensive lines. I think both defensive lines really took over the game, and I just think the Steelers made the big play when it needed it the most. I thought the Browns did a great job of every time they started to get a little bit of momentum on offense, they would get a sack, they would get a tackle for loss, they would sniff out a screen and stop it for no gain. I thought the Browns defensive line played very well, and funny enough, I thought the interior played much better than the outside guys. And we hear of those guys, Myles Garrett and Darius Smith and some of those guys for being these great pass rushers, which they are. I mean, I think they're probably arguably the best pass rush tandem in the league, but the interior guys, I mean, listen, Shelby Harris was making plays. Mo Hurst had a sack. Down top, like all these guys were making plays throughout the entire game. So it was really exciting to see that. But man, when they needed it the most, Highsmith and TJ Watt shined through for them. The rookie Nick Herbig, who I was super high on coming out of Wisconsin, had a couple plays, and he ended up drawing a face mask on Deshaun Watson that ended up taking one of the big positive plays, and that was a big play in the game. and that was a big play in the game for the Steelers. It took the momentum, killed the drive. Just all the defensive line play really just shined through to me in the second half, and big more than any storyline, more than any injury or anything like that. Just the on-field play, man. It was a very tough time for both of those offensive lines trying to block those guys.
Yeah, for sure. I thought, we saw the upside and some of the issues with a guy like Dawan Jones coming in,
Yeah.
where he's very physically imposing, but he's, if it's a deep drop, it's hard for him to get back quite far enough for a guy that has as much speed as a TJ Watt. You see times where I think he was blocking somebody off the edge, and he thought he had the block. It's like, well done. He knocked the guy down, and then he just kind of stood up and like turned around. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson is still running around in the backfield and ends up getting sacked from, Jones's guy. So you got to maintain the block, even if you think you won. Like, if you got a guy that's trying to extend the play, then you gotta keep going.
Right.
I thought the Browns' offensive line did have a better overall day. The Steelers started to put things together a little bit at the end, but man, they couldn't do anything. I mean, Pickett had no time, and not just that he had no time, he didn't trust them at all. Like, even on the plays
funny.
where he had a
Listen,
set.
it's funny you say that. I just saw somebody just posted a tweet. People calling me coming in. The Steelers entered the fourth quarter trailing by 3 points. They generated -7 yards of offense in the quarter and still won the football game.
Yes, exactly.
That's like, come on, that doesn't even make sense. Like, come on, it's unfathomable to have -7 yards and be trailing in the quarter and come back and win the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, up until towards the end of the game, I was watching the stats just compile. I mean, Najee Harris had like something terrible. He had a long run of 21, and he ended up with 43 yards. So on 9 carries, he compiled 22 yards on 9 carries, right? Like, it's just not good. And Jalen Warren had a few plays where he just escaped his first tackler and just like made something happen. But he had 6 carries for 20 yards. It's like they're doing everything. They're getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. Pickett has no time. The one time he actually did make a big play, he completely sacrificed his body for it. He's another guy that had to. I don't think he missed any snaps because it just correlated with the touchdown, but he had to go to the locker room. He for sure got shot up with something because his left chest or shoulder was jacked up.
Right.
And then, what's his name? Actually, Garrett too was limping around, but they couldn't do anything. They were all just beat to hell. But just to tack onto the physicality note, Deshaun Watson is already kind of established himself as one of the less likable people in the NFL for various reasons, which we don't have to go into now. But when was the last time you saw a quarterback get 2 personal foul penalties for like straight up violent face mask? When have you ever seen that? Like, he's not making himself any more likable. I've never seen a quarterback just grab the face mask of a defender and throw him out of bounds, and then later grab the face mask of a defender and just throw him to the ground to try and extend a play. Like, once is an accident, twice.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said before the game. Like, the way people play them, like, they are extra physical with them. Like, they're already pretty physical with quarterbacks in general, but they're extra physical with them. They're pushing them, close to the out of bounds, and I feel like he's doing that to try to counteract it, because he's trying to get back in their head and be like, I'm not, basically like, you aren't going to punk me. Like, I'm not a punk. You can't do this to me. Like, but you have to understand that in doing that, you're also costing your team drives. And listen, the Browns offensive line wasn't great. They didn't block very well. His receiver, ball, the first play of the game, the pick six bounced off the tight end's hands. Like, you're NFL tight end. It was a little bit out in front of you, but come on, you're paid to catch those balls. I feel like it's just building up for him. Like, he's already frustrated, and he's trying to take it out on everybody else and show them that you can't punk me. It's like, listen, you got to take a step back. It's not going your way right now. You're already in always going to be the bad guy in the court of public opinion. It's never going to change, right or wrong. Nobody knows what actually happened, and we don't have to get into all that stuff. Right or wrong, you're always going to be this hated figure. You have to accept it. This is what they're going to treat you like. This is what it's going to be like. They're going to be extra dirty on the field. There are going to be extra curriculums going on. You can't then respond or take it out on them and be frustrated. That's just the game that we play. You're going to get called. The referees are going to be looking at you extra hard. You're looking at it and throw you out of the game because you kind of push the referee out of the way. I know it's been a widely debated topic because a couple people have done it. Josh Allen did it last year. I think Dak Prescott did it last year as well. Pushed the referee out of the way, didn't get thrown out of the game for it. But I guarantee you somebody is going to talk about that on a national show tomorrow and say that he should have been thrown out of the game for that because you're under the public eye. You're going to face the scrutiny for the rest of your career. It would be smart to just avoid it altogether and do the best you can do to not bring extra attention to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And it's tough. I mean, you needed that win to really keep pace with the Ravens because we'll talk about them in a minute, but they're looking pretty good right now. And to drop back a game on them and to lose the game in the division, it stinks. It's got to be stressful. But you got to maintain composure. You have to, no matter how emotional it gets out there. But all right, let's move on to the second game or first game rather of.
Oh, this is the most one of the more frustrating football games I've ever watched, and it's not even from it's from an offensive line standpoint. I thought both offensive lines struggled, but listen, just the play calling standpoint on both teams, just like that was one of the more just embarrassing offensive performances I've seen in the National Football League that wasn't in inclement weather. Like the Patriots game where they only threw the ball 3 times and it was a snowstorm, we can exclude that. Even Joe Burrow last week, it was raining, cats and dogs, new offensive line trying to get it together. I can excuse that. It was perfect weather, man. This was just terrible play calling, terrible personnel groupings, terrible quarterback play on both sides. It was just one of the more frustrating games I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. I think the biggest issue was the offensive line play for both teams because both teams have good defensive lines, right? And both teams just have good defenses outright. And so pressure makes it hard because you're not also getting guys just coming open down the field. But yeah, I mean, it was frustrating. But at the same time, it's just like it's the kind of win that I have come to expect in the NFC South. I mean, how different really was it than the Falcons and the Panthers last week, right? Like I feel
more
like
exciting, man. It's more. At least there was like explosives in that game where I didn't watch the game and wanted to like claw my eyes out. At least it was a watchable product. Even on the plays where like the interceptions that Bryce Young had last week, you saw in between that. Okay, he's figuring it out. This is what's happening. He's processing. He's getting the ball out quick. This is what they're trying to do. He has to hold the safety better, which he did a good job tonight. That's something that I did learn watching the second half. On that last drop, he held the middle of the field safety. The boundary corner with his eyes and was able to squeeze the ball into the hole from the middle of the field safety. So it's something that I saw translate from last week to this week, but at least there was that in that game, and I got to see that. Mm-hmm. And at least, Bijan Robinson's making some funny plays, and like he's juking guys out of their socks and he's scoring a touchdown. This was just like, this was just terrible. Missed field goals, and it's just frustrating to watch, man. Especially on the Panthers because they're just so limited. It's like, I'm frustrated with the play calling, but in actuality, how do you adjust to that? You don't have a bell cow running back. I mean, I like Miles Sanders a lot, but I don't think he's like the Nick Chubb type where you can give him the ball 20 times a game and really rely on that. And you have zero separation. You have zero speedsters at wide receiver. Like it's tough to manage.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something that we could talk about and something I criticized for the Panthers coming into the year with a rookie quarterback because, it's great to have Adam Thielen who's consistently open, but, he had 7 catches for 54 yards, right? Long of 15. He's averaging less than 10 yards a reception. And that's nice because it means you don't have to throw the ball away on every play, but you can't really have sustained success on offense if you get no chunk plays through the air. Got no big time receiver to actually make it happen. And Mingo is very athletic, like he's your would-be speedster, but it's more of a size speed thing than like an outright speed thing. Plus he's got a long way to go. He's got a long way to go.
It's totally different when you have to do, like you said, within the structure of an offense. He can run straight line speed very fast, but running the routes, the timing. I mean, listen, there's two plays where him and Thielen are running the exact same route, almost at the exact same depth. Like, there's just so much miscommunication going on. It's just
Yeah.
it's hard to play quarterback like that. But I feel like people are unfair to the offensive linemen as well because I was a little upset. I'm like watching this is like, man, these guys have to be better, and they absolutely do. I'm not giving them that much bail, but it's hard for those guys too. If the ball's supposed to be out 3-step and he has to double clutch it and hold it, like you're expecting the ball to be out quick. It's kind of like the Aaron Rodgers thing with the cut block where the ball should have been out, and the quarterback doesn't get hit, and then you hold on the ball for just a second longer, you're getting sacked, or there's a sack strip, or he's throwing the ball up and it's an interception. So all the way around, they have to be better, man.
Yeah. All right. So for my pivotal play for the game, it was the big play down the sideline to Chris Olave because that was really the jumpstart of any serious offense. And they were not great on offense after that. It was really for a lot of the game, it was just, quick passes to Michael Thomas to even sustain drives at all. But this was the first big play that put them down the field, gave them the chance to score. Things started to open up a little bit more. After that, they ended up getting another big play to Rashid Shaheed, who's another speed player that they have. They started getting some chunk plays from Taysom Hill in the run game. So, like this was the jump start to their offense. This put them up. It started to let them get a little more aggressive on defense as well because then you have to start throwing the ball or trying to at least to catch up when you're behind as the game's closing. Because we're talking about a chunk of the way through the third quarter. So when that happens and you start to run low on just time to catch up and take the lead as a team that doesn't play well in offense like the Panthers, a single touchdown lead starts to mean a lot. So that was my pivotal moment. What about yours?
I would say that's probably the pivotal moment in that game. I mean, I think there was a couple plays on the Panthers offense where I thought that they should have run the ball that would have extended the drive and could have potentially have been a pivotal play in the game. Especially like on that last drive, you saw they did some quick hitting stuff. They automatically had to adjust to it on defense. Boom, quick hit and run. So I would say that like from an X's and O's standpoint, and the way I just watching the game and how I view the game, what didn't happen on the field was probably the most pivotal moment for me instead of the
Sometimes
actual
how it
play.
is.
Yep. So it's like sometimes people talk about the plays that the quarterbacks do make, and I'm like sometimes the plays
Mhm.
that they don't make, and it just it could be as simple as a throwaway when they miss an
Mhm.
open guy running up the seam. Something as simple as that
Mhm.
could be the most pivotal moment in the game. But like you said, if we're talking about what actually happened on the field, you have to take that play. It completely flipped the momentum because the Panthers defense was swarming. They were playing lights out. And for the most part, I still think they played pretty dang impressive. Like they gave you the ball back, I believe, twice in your own in plus territory. Weren't able to get points from that drive. Uh, they gave you three and out after three and out. Gave you the ball back. I don't know how many times. We have to look at a stat that shows you how many three and outs they had. But they played very well against that Saints offense that does have some very explosive players. So I don't think it's realistic to expect them to limit Chris Olave and Shaheed or Michael Thomas, some of those guys that made some absolutely incredible catches. I mean, listen, that's just a tough break in my opinion. Like I don't think that they weren't in good coverage. They were playing these guys very well. They were jamming a lot of these speed guys because they have some very shifty, speedy guys to match them, and I thought they played very well. But man, that catch Michael Thomas that got his button inbounds and caught that ball in the first half, huge moment. The Olave catch, like you said, huge moment. The Shaheed ball on third down when they could have got the ball back and it would have been a 4 point game for the Panthers to try to go score and win. Got the first down to Shaheed, boom, huge moment. Finish off that drive and score a touchdown. So I think the Olave was the biggest moment. I have to go with you there for sure. But man, it's just when I was in college, my coach always told me there's 5 plays that change the momentum and change the outcome of every football game. No matter how big the score, no matter how close the score, there's about 5 plays. And I think you can literally go back and point out all 5 of those plays in this game because there were so few explosives in general in this game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Saints are a more well-structured offense. There's really no doubt about it. And the Panthers held them to 7 of 16 on third down, right? So that's
Yeah.
9 times getting off the field on third down, which is you need that if you want any chance to get by. I don't have the exact number of 3 and outs in front of me, but that's a substantial chunk of plays right there. So for me, for my story of the first half, I had down uh, just stifling defense, right? We've already kind of talked about it. And you can talk about it critically in the offensive sense. certainly there wasn't great play on the offensive line. Trevor Penning was definitely a problem, but there were other guys on the Saints O
Listen,
line
Ramchick gave
that
up a
was
couple too. I was
yeah,
shocked.
man. Yeah, he didn't have the best day either. And then on the other side, they I don't know if the pass rush was as ferocious and the issues were as much with the offensive line, but they just couldn't get anything going. The guys were all covered. You know what I mean? So I just had overall stifling defense as my primary story of the first half. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, and I would say the lack of continuity on offense for the Panthers just it's something that you can't expect a young quarterback to adjust to and actually improve, or the offensive line. I mean, they have some offensive linemen that are young, like Icky's only going into his second year. They have a rookie Chandler Zavala starting at right guard. Bradley Bozeman is playing out of position. I mean, listen, I
Hmm.
just think that from a group that most people thought was on the incline, that was improving towards the end of last season, to see this is just it's almost confusing because it's just out of nowhere. It's just they were not nearly this bad. It wasn't this many holes in the offensive line. So, like you said, I think the Saints rush was a little bit more tame, but they did a great job in blitz in timing their blitz. Uh, they did a great job with rotating the bodies. They're very deep. So
Hmm.
when those guys were tired up front, Brian Brzee came in and he made a couple big plays. You just saw the Saints really run through enough bodies to keep them guessing, to keep them on their heels. And when you're doing that with a rookie quarterback and a
Yeah.
wide receiver group that doesn't they don't run routes well together, they are confused about their communication and their depth and their timing. It makes for the game that we saw in that first half. And I don't think it was any different in the second half at all. It was probably worse in the second half. They were just able to muster up that last drive, which was hilarious because they were playing prevent on the back end,
Hmm.
but they weren't doing anything different up front. They were
I
rushing
know.
four. They were rushing four almost the entire game and generating pressure with four, unless they were sending pressures on third down. So it's funny to me that they were able to dial it up and start taking the underneath stuff then and get to a rhythm. And I love the fact that they went no huddle, some tempo. We don't see it enough in the NFL. Tempo in
Hmm.
the NFL could be deadly because it's just so it's nobody's
Yeah.
accustomed to having to
Gonna
defend it.
talk about that later too.
Yeah, so it's like it was funny watching that because I'm like, where was this all game? Why weren't you drawing up, some stick stuff and some some flat curl wheel stuff and getting to the flats with the running back? Why weren't you doing that earlier? These are all things that one, get your quarterback into a rhythm, two, keep you ahead of the chains, and three, make the defense account for it because they'll have to start bringing guys down and get to the flats, and then you can start hitting the inside runs and the run game improves. It's just simple stuff. It's just funny to me that they waited to the last drive to make that happen against a very much similar look.
Yeah. All right. So my story of the second half was just that the chunk plays by the Saints started to really open things up for them. And again, I already kind of mentioned this, but there was big plays down the sideline, a few chunk plays for Michael Thomas as well. The one where he caught the ball deep in the red zone, got his button bounce. That was a big one. And then
Yep.
Taysom Hill as well. And then they just were able to just make some things happen, and that was really the difference in the game. And this wasn't. This is one where you're not really going to get truly special defined moments or defined themes because it just, like you said, it was ugly. It was kind of sloppy. It was it was unimpressive. So the team that just had a little bit more in them, a little bit more veteran savvy, a guy who's just able to go out and make that play. I mean, that play by Chris Olave was an extremely impressive catch, right? Like he's diving for that ball. It's remarkable that he caught it going down the sideline at that speed. You know what I mean? He kind of tipped it to himself and everything. So it's just that guy that makes that play sparks the offense. Then you get a few more big plays, nothing quite to that degree, but that ends up winning you the game. So that was my take on the second half. And you have anything different before we move on here?
No, not at all. I'm excited to move on to something else so we can talk about something fun because that game, I'll try to wash that one out of my brain. I'll watch the all 22 just because it's what I do. I'll watch pretty much every game I can, but yeah, I'm not trying to think about that one right now.
Yeah. All right. So Let's move on to another primetime game as we work backwards here. The Miami Dolphins go into Foxborough and win 24-17 on Sunday Night Football. So I have thoughts on this game. I kind of want to let you go first a little bit with it so I don't direct the conversation too much tonight. So I'll let you give your initial thoughts, and then I'll come in with my pivotal moment here. But I have some very clearly defined thoughts on how this went and how it could have been better for both teams.
I think, listen, first of all, it's great to go into Foxborough and win. No, Tua and Mike McDaniel, or excuse me, Tua is 5-0. Mike McDaniel is now 3-1, I believe, against Bill Belichick. So it's kind of funny. Like, of all people that you would think would have that type of record against Bill Belichick and the Patriots defense, you wouldn't think it would be Tua and Mike McDaniel. But I thought that I thought the defense came out and did a very good job of setting the tone, and especially just getting off the field early in the game. I thought first half they played lights out. Benton didn't break in the second half. We'll get to that, but they did a very good job of mixing it up, getting pressures with 4 down, which we haven't seen a ton from the Dolphins. I think Bradley Chubb had his best game as the Dolphin. Andrew Van Ginkel had an incredible game. Christian Wilkins and Saylor were very disruptive in the middle. I'm still a little bit weary on the linebacker play. David Long Jr. is a good player. Jerome Baker is a good player. I don't know if they're good enough to take this team 100% serious as Super Bowl contenders, as AFC Championship contenders. I'm not sure about that. But I thought the secondary was played very well in the first half. I think they're still working out the kinks a little bit on the back end. I think Xavier Howard's starting to get back a little bit to his previous form, which will be huge going forward. But
This one was a little rough for him.
Yeah, but I think he's starting to work back into it, and you saw the light go off a little bit. It doesn't hurt when you play a team that doesn't have as explosive weapons as some of the other guys are going to be playing. But I really do think that Kader Kohu is going to be one of the premier players at the DB position for a long time, and he made some crazy plays, especially just coming up and tackling in open space, which is a hard thing for DBs to do, man. I don't think people realize how hard it is for those DBs that are 185 pounds to go and tackle some of these guys on offense. So I really thought that the defense set the tone for the game, and then they were so efficient offensively. My biggest takeaway from the 2 weeks of Miami Dolphins football, I don't think I learned anything about Tua. I haven't learned anything about Tyreek or Mike McDaniel or the offense. As a whole, I've learned everything about this offensive line. The offensive line is by far the MVP of the first 2 weeks of the season. They played, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Morgan Fox, 3 very good pass rushers. Then you go face Matthew Judon, Uche, some of those guys. They have some really good pass rushers there in New England as well. And not only that, they do a great job of scheming guys open. You'll get a lot of, exotic blitzes. You'll get a lot of different coverages that'll confuse you and really change the looks for you up front. They play a lot of multiple stuff. And they didn't phase. They weren't phased. They didn't budge one bit. And I thought they did an excellent job of protecting Tua. On the flip side, they did an even better job running the football, which is something we haven't seen from this offense. And more than any X's and O's thing that I can take away, because I think there was, like you said, there was definitely some very key points that could have swung the game in either direction. But I think more often, if you look at it, could have buried the game for the Dolphins, and it could have been a blowout. Could have been pretty bad. But I think I'm just taking away mostly that the offensive line has played lights out, especially when you consider that they're down Teron Armstead, who's one of the 3 or 5 best tackles in the NFL. So that was my biggest takeaway, man. I haven't learned too much about this team, other than the fact that the offensive line has taken a major step, and Vic Fangio has really set the tone and maximized the ability of this defense so far.
Yeah, I think there are certain points on the offense where, well, look, they're performing better on the offensive line than anticipated, which is great for them. I still feel like they haven't really gone up against the best of the best in terms of like the true pass rushers, because the Patriots just play a little bit different. And I think last week, I don't want to get too far into last week, but they have played better than expected, but still need to be truly tested, I think, against some of the best if you're going to make it through the playoffs. But so for my pivotal moment for the Patriots and Dolphins here, I think you could consider the big Mostert run possibly it, but for me it was the the interception that Mac Jones threw to Xavier Howard, which was late in the third quarter, and they were not in the red zone. I don't think they were, but they
No,
were
they
deep
were.
in opposing territory, and the ball was picked off in the red zone. And the reason for that is just that your offense, it does not generally allow you to take major chunk plays down the field. So even though they ended up getting the ball back and then scoring, when they got the ball back again and tried to score again to tie up the game, they just ran out of time. So when you give up a key opportunity like that to get at least some amount of points late in the game, and you're an offense that just doesn't have the juice to I mean, look at the Dolphins have like 6 guys on their roster who can take it to the house on any play. The Patriots have 0, to be perfectly honest. So not cashing in on an opportunity like that was the pivotal moment in my opinion. What do you think?
Uh, I don't know if I would pinpoint that as the pivotal moment, but I do think that was uh, it was super unfortunate because I think Matt could have 1000% thrown a better ball in that situation. But it's a 50-50 ball with your six, I believe he's 6'5" or 6'4", however tall Devontae Parker is, on 5'10" Xavier Howard, and he doesn't even attempt to go up and get the ball. I would be okay if you get an offensive pass interference in that situation and just throw Xavier Howard out of the way. Whatever you have to do, first of all, fight for the ball because chances are, if you both are high pointing that ball and trying to go get it, you'll probably win or at the least break the ball up. Two, if you're not going to even give any effort to try to break the ball up or throw Xavier Howard out of bounds so he can't catch it inbounds, what are you doing, man? Like, it's just something as the Dolphins, because I'm a Dolphins fan, it's something I watched him do for like 5 years now. He used to do the same thing in Miami where he wouldn't fight for 50-50 balls. It seemed to be a little bit of a lack of effort on plays like that. And it was just a little bit confusing to watch because, like I said, quarterback definitely could throw a better ball there, or he could probably just not draw up a deep shot there, especially in that situation. I think you were moving the ball methodically and had the game, within reach, and there was no need to probably risk it there. But man, it's just something I've always seen with Devontae Parker. It always frustrates me with him. There's
Mhm.
no reason to be 6'5" if you're not going to fight for those type of
Well,
balls.
to be fair, he's 6'3" versus Xavier
Six
Howard, who's
three.
6'1". So there isn't that much of a differential between the two. And I also think that he didn't have leverage in the situation. He would have had to go up and over. I think he was pretty well boxed out there. I think it was a bad decision to throw the ball. Um, and I think that he probably should have gone elsewhere with it, and he was trying to force it in. I also think that Xavier Howard was more aggressive, and Parker probably
Yeah,
could have at least broken it up. But
yeah.
yeah,
He just hate. I just hate watching him, man. He just gives zero effort at the point of attack. He's always been this way, and it's just even in the Dolphins days, man. Because like you see how good the guy can be. Like he has some crazy like natural ability, and he just doesn't use it. Like you said, even because I do agree, he shouldn't have forced the ball. I thought it was a bad ball. Could have thrown a better ball for sure if you're going to go there. But come on, bro, just fight for the ball. You're in a one possession game, in a division game. First of all, I hate having division games within the first 3 weeks of the season. And there's some teams that are already 2-0 in the division, like crazy. Like the Ravens are sitting pretty right now, 2-0 in the division.
yeah.
Now I believe the Bengals are 0-2 in the division already, and then now Steelers and the Browns are both 1-1. So smooth sailing for those guys if they just stay healthy. But
I don't
just
think the
man, fight for
Ravens
the
are
ball,
2-0
man.
in the division because they play the Texans week
They play the
one.
Texans.
Yeah.
Correct. Sorry. Actually, the Saints are the ones that are 2-0 in the division. No, not the Saints. I'm drawing a
Yeah,
blank here.
Saints
Somebody's
are
2-0.
2-0. Saints are 2-0 in the division.
Well, I think
No, they beat the Titans last
they
week.
beat the Titans. Somebody's
There
2-0
is
in the division.
somebody who is.
Oh,
Hold on. I've got it written
uh,
down here.
yeah. Come on. I just had it and then it left me again. But there's a team that's already 2-0
Uh,
in the division, and it's just crazy to be sitting in that position after the first 2 weeks of the year. Like, it, I think that you shouldn't have a division games until after week 3 at least, make it almost like the preseason. And you see it in college football, like you have the non-conference schedule the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, then boom, you're playing conference games after week 3. So I hate that because they mean so much more in the NFL, man. Like especially how the playoff format is set up, and you want to be at your best when you're playing those games. I feel like it'll be a better product for the NFL as well. But um, who knows? They probably want these big matchups to kick off the year and spike those TV ratings. But I've never liked that.
All right. So the story of the first half to me, this kind of gets back to what you were talking about a few minutes ago. I have the fresh dynamic offense versus the stale plodding offense. It's just so visibly on display from both a schematic outlook as well as a roster construction outlook. These teams are so fundamentally different. You look at the Patriots and they've got this big offensive line, they've got a big running back, they've got some big receivers, and they all play physical. And they've got the quarterback who's reliable, navigates the pocket pretty well, has a good enough arm, and his game is about decision making, or it's supposed to be. And they've got no juice. They've got no explosive guys. They've got no pre-snap movement. Everything is so static. It's like we're just gonna match up and win. Their offense is so fundamentally different from the Dolphins, which is they've taken pre-snap movement to a new level. They're doing different kinds of motions, moving guys, moving outside, got guys coming across the formation. They're doing everything. Got guys coming back and forth. And they've got, like I said, like 6 guys who can take it to the house. I mean, is Braxton Berrios like their slowest receiver? And he's actually like a 4.3 dude. Like their team is so fast. We got Mostert's super explosive fast. Ahmed is super fast. A-Chain, who
Yeah,
did barely
Craycraft's
even
probably the
plays.
slowest.
Craycraft maybe the slowest.
Listen, they're
But like,
scheming him open better than it. I mean, listen, everybody's worried about the speed, and they're scheming him open. He's become a pretty integral part of the offense. So
yeah, I mean, he's made
he's a part of it.
big time conversions he's had. And so I think that it would it might be the most obvious here versus Dolphins against any other team. I mean, I don't know, maybe the Falcons are too like that because they're pretty old school in some of their tendencies, but it's just fundamentally different in the way that they do things, and that just cropped up like so visibly. It's like the Dolphins took a commanding lead early in the game purely off of this, I would say, because the Patriots do have a good defense, but they don't match up particularly well to the speed, even though they have infused speed on the back end for their defensive backs. But it just it makes you feel like the Patriots are of a bygone era on offense specifically. What do you think?
Well, listen, man, I watched Bill O'Brien offense last year at Alabama, so I'm pretty familiar with what's going on right now, and I feel bad for Matt because it's just like you saw a little bit in the second half. Uh, once he tweaked it a little bit, and they started to get a little bit more of the intermediate passing game going instead of just all dinking and dunking and all vertical shots. Once they got the intermediate passing game going, which Mac what he excels at, I thought they were a lot better. I think I have to give a little bit of credit to the Dolphins defense as well for stifling the run game because that's what they really want to do is run the football. And they held Ramondre Stevenson to I believe what it was 50 to 55 yards, somewhere in there in that range. I know it was somewhere within 50 yards. So when you hold Ramondre, who's been on a pretty much a tear the last year and a half, he's been playing some really good football. I thought that was probably the key to the first half is really limiting him. I think he had one explosive in the second half, but man, it changes everything that they want to do offensively because it is a little bit. I don't even want to say it's archaic because I think the way defenses are playing right now, you kind of have to get back to that. We're seeing so much of it across the NFL. There's only one or two offenses that can really.
You
do
have to
this.
be able to do it. That's the difference. You need
Yeah,
to be
I
able
agree
to
for the
do it.
most
You
part,
cannot
but
exclusively rely on it.
I think there's only one or maybe two. I'm trying to go through the Rolodex right now. There's maybe two offenses in the NFL right now that can even match up with Miami. If I'm talking about innovation and trying new stuff and being successful,
I agree,
it's
but that's the
probably Miami.
direction you should be heading, though.
I mean, I don't think I don't. I'm not gonna. It's hard to agree there because personnel allows you to do that. Without the personnel, you try to run that, you're going to get shut down. You're going to there's nothing possible that you can do to threaten defenses if you don't have the speed and the multiplicity that they have to have it at every single position, and even at the running back positions out of the backfield or Alec Ingold, where you can insert him and some of the blocking stuff and get him out to the class and some of the stuff they do with him. I would probably say Miami and San Francisco are the only offenses built like that. Even some of the more explosive offenses like the Chiefs and the Eagles, they are built to do the things that these guys do. I mean, we
Yeah.
know the Eagles is a super RPO heavy, inside zone heavy team. It's not even close to the same thing that Miami Dolphins do. but they're still very explosive. Like I said, they have those guys because you have an AJ Brown and a Devontae Smith and a Dallas Goedert. The personnel allows for you to have more explosives within the kind of simpler structure. But if you're talking about like multiplicity, multiple formations, multiple ways of using the motion, the jet motion stuff that they're doing with Tyreek. There's one play where they hit Tyreek, literally hit him behind the tight end and the tackle, and then he comes to a cause of motion on the snap, and you can't even find the guy because he's however tall he is, and he's high behind these guys. You can only do that with the Christian McCaffrey, I believe. So I do agree with you that you have to try. There has to be something that you have to do. It can't be what they do, probably, but you have to try something to be a little bit more innovative offensively. And I thought they did that in the second half a little bit better. They started to use the crosses a lot better. They started to confuse the defense a little bit because if you're going to send that pressure, you have to be able to account for it in the intermediate part of the field because you're always going to have somebody deep. You're always going to have somebody coming forward. So take advantage of the little areas. But too little, too late, man. Especially like you said, that offense isn't built to come from behind. It's definitely not built to come from behind.
And part of it is just about the hoarding of the players, right? The Dolphins have gone so out of their way to get these fast players. So they already had Waddle from before McDaniel got there, right? He was there, and they go out of their way to go get Hill, Mostert, Ahmed, A-Chain, Barrios. All of these guys who are ridiculously fast are additions after McDaniel got there, right? So he's making a point, like, we need more of these guys. And I understand that there's only so many fast guys in the league, but you need explosive players, and the Patriots have zero. I don't know what I know 40 is not everything, but what's the fastest 40 of any skill player on their roster right now? Aside from, they've got
probably Kendrick Bourne, maybe. Yeah, he's probably the biggest speedster, and I don't even know if he's actually a straight line speed guy. He's more of an in-game guy to me. Like coming out of Eastern Washington, he was a explosive guy. He made some explosive plays for them. He's probably their best just burner. I don't know what his 40 time is, but he's probably the guy that I would think has the most explosion.
Well, let's see. 4.68.
Yeah, so he's the most explosive guy on the field to me.
I know they drafted
he's the guy running open.
Tyquan Thornton they drafted last year. I know, but he's hurt right now, and so they just have nobody. That's why you can't have only one dude. So anyway, I won't belabor the point anymore. I'll move on to the story of the second half, which is adjustments, like you said, too little, too late, defensively, and then offensively. They adjust as well, both schematically, but also with pace. And remember how I said that we're going to come back to no huddle. Like, I don't want to say 2-minute drill because that's very specific to where you're attacking on the field, but like the pace of your offense, the speed at which you get to the line, keeping guys on the field defensively, and then exploiting those formations, not letting the defense have or personnel groups, and they're not letting the defense take time to communicate and figure out where it is that you're going with the ball. Like, this is something that they utilized well in the second half, but just too little, too late. And then you throw the physicality in there. You could kind of see some of the Dolphins players getting worn down a little bit. I think on the offensive line, you could see them getting worn down a little bit more too. So these are all things that will happen when you go up against Bill Belichick. But if you have an explosive offense that he's not prepared for in the first half, then you're going to have a significant lead because what they've put together on offense there, they just can't do that. Like they can't keep up with you in the first half, not without Brady at least. They can't keep up with you in the first half and then turn around once they figured everything out and then make it all up later, right? Not unless you make major mistakes, not unless you give them a few turnovers or let them return a ball in the return game or something like that. So that's what stood out to me in the second half. Anything further for you?
Second half, man. Listen, they established the run. I thought that was the biggest difference between the first half and the second half, and just the Miami Dolphins of old and where they are now. They were able to run the football to and through. And listen, I hated that because I was watching the game and he was playing so perfect. And I'm like, listen, I can see him getting antsy because they're playing these 2 high, 3 high structures and taking everything away. They did a really good job of limiting what Tyreek did vertically. And I could see him getting bored with the process. He's dinking and dunking. He's making some really great intermediate throws. I mean,
Hmm.
from 10 to 17, 18 yards, he made some incredible throws to the boundary, opposite field, stuff that they said that he couldn't do because of his limited arm strength. And I'm just like, I'm loving the way he's playing right now. He's playing one of the best games I've ever seen him play. But I can see him getting antsy. I'm like, he wants to force it so bad. He wants that explosive. He wants that 50, 40 yarder. And I'm like, I tweeted it in the second quarter. I was like, I said, I can see him getting antsy. He wants to force one so bad. Don't do it. And then he does it in the third quarter. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God. I'm like,
Yeah,
dog. Like,
he does like to force it sometimes. He does. He
he just
forced
don't
a
be.
couple in week 1 too.
Well, the thing is, he does it. He throws the deep balls like he throws the intermediate balls. He's throwing to blind spots instead of
Mhm.
reading it for what it is at the moment. So he sees Tyreek running up the field, and he's not accounting for Christian Gonzalez, who made a hell of a play, even though it was a terrible decision to throw the ball. He made a great play. He reverses his track. He comes over his shoulder and then goes back and goes to get the interception. But Tua is throwing into a blind spot like he does in the middle of the field. If there was a crossover or a dig on the backside, and he's throwing into that spot. I was like, man, please don't do it. But that's neither here nor there. After an interception, he's one of the best quarterbacks statistically the league has ever seen. I can't remember the stat right now, but I'll look it up and I'll bring it up for next time. But I would prefer not to be in that situation, but I prefer even more that instead of making him go right back to those plays and trying to force it against the defense, like Bill Belichick's defense, which in that situation could get very tricky because they do so many things well. They just went to running the football and they were able to lean on the run game. And instead of having to force it, or instead of trying to get Tyreek involved or Waddle involved and trying to force the passing game, they just handed the ball off, trusted the guys up front, and not only did it pay off, they went and popped a huge run for a touchdown. And then the drive after
Mhm.
that, they burned, I believe, 5 or 6 minutes of clock, even though they end up missing that field goal, which was that incredible. We didn't even talk about the field goal. The field goal block was incredible. Literally never seen that before. But they burned a lot of clock on that possession because they were able to run the football and keep the chains moving. So the Dolphins being able to do that against that Patriots defense was the biggest takeaway for me from the second half.
Mhm.
That's what allowed them to win the football game.
Yeah, that was the field goal block where they brought the dude from
Right. And
basically out wide, gave him the running start. That only works if you time it perfectly, though, right?
right.
But that was pretty cool. All right, last thing that I wanted to mention about the game was Christian Gonzalez, and there are a few things I'll harp on throughout the season until I'm basically proven wrong. But it's like, how does this guy get to 19th overall? Like, was it 19 or 17 or whatever?
He went
It's like
17, but the biggest thing, so from what I heard from somebody in those circles, was that he had a concern about his ability to play within structure. He freestyled a lot. So a lot of people were a little bit worried about that being in structure. But if there was anybody in the history of football that can make a guy like that fit within his structure,
yeah,
it's Bill Belichick. So I
yeah,
could see a little bit because, you had the two people that went above him were Witherspoon, I believe. And, he's very, very solid. He's very, what you're going to get from that guy.
hmm
And I think did Forbes go above
Forbes
him? Forbes, and
16.
he's having a hell of a season so far for the Commanders. He's playing some really good football. But still, like, man, listen, I thought Forbes was a bit of a freestyler as well. He's very instinctual. My comp for
He is a
Forbes,
freestyler.
yeah, my comp for him coming out was Trayvon Diggs. I thought they played very much similar, took a lot of chances. So, but listen, they let him fall to the wrong guy, and we're going to see this guy be, barring any injury, anything unforeseen, he's going to be one of the
So
better
annoying.
cornerbacks in the league for a long time.
Yeah. And he still could use some improvement in the run game. He was supposed to set an edge at one point, kind of just got locked up in the block, didn't really disengage properly, and then he obviously didn't make the tackle. So like there's things, I get it, but in terms of what really makes a corner valuable, like he's just so natural in coverage. And he gave up a play, but he's a rookie, and for me, like, he's showing a lot of really great things already. So, all right, Los Angeles Chargers 24 at the Titans 27. So the Titans get a win at home. The Chargers are now 0-2 on the season. I did not think that the Titans would win this game, but I did think it would be close because their defense is legit. I think I did not. Look, letting the Dolphins go for 500 something yards of offense was not a good sign, but I did not think that they would get gashed by the Titans offense. And in the second half, that's pretty much what happened. Offensively, uh, look, I mean, so I'll just jump straight into my pivotal moment here. My
Yeah,
pivotal
go ahead.
moment is giving up a 70-yard or 69-yard, whatever it was, completion to Traylon Burks. I mean, you can't do that. Like, I, it's not his game. He didn't, when you actually watch the all 22, that he didn't
Yeah.
set him up. He didn't do anything. Like, you should not be like waiting that long to turn your hips when you're facing a guy like that. He's not this like ridiculous route runner who's going to stop on a dime and cut back. Like, you got to be prepared to run, because that's the one thing he does have is just straight line speed along with size. So when you let him get up on you like that, and then you just like, you can't run with him, it's just another mistake that just drives me crazy with this defense that's supposed to be good when you just look at the personnel. And so that was a pivotal moment, because they, even though you're letting them get chunk plays later on in the game, that is a different type of chunk play. That there are certain teams that can get that on you just purely because of the talent and who they have, whether it's the quarterback, receiver skill, whatever. Like a guy like Tyreek Hill, he can just do that to you. The Titans cannot do that to you unless you do it to yourself. And so that's why it was a pivotal play for me. It set them up for a scoring opportunity right on the goal line, and you ended up losing by just a few points. So that's why it was a pivotal play for me. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I thought that was a pivotal play. I mean, if we're going like from my perspective, the pivotal play or situation for me is how bad the Chargers were on third down. I thought they were really good on early downs. They actually went 3 for 3 on fourth downs. They were very efficient, capitalizing in those big moments. But they were 2 of 14 on third down. You can't win. And listen, they still put up 340 yards of offense against that Titans defense, which is really good to me. I mean, listen, they put up that many yards. They had 24 points. I think the offense played well enough to win the football game. But when your defense is struggling this bad, and that's a whole other conversation, because I don't think that's when you have a defensive guru, a defensive genius as the head coach, and you spend all that money you spent on the defense, giving up 57 points or however many it's been in the first 2 weeks is unacceptable. The offense hasn't turned the ball over. They have 0 turnovers through 2 games, and they scored more than 50 points. It's the first time in NFL history that an offense has put up 50 plus points and not turned the ball over and been 0-2 in those football games. Unacceptable. So while I do think that the defense is the main culprit, I'm looking at the offense here because I think that's somewhere that they were inefficient, where they could have been better. And if they're just even 50% there, it probably is good enough to win in the football game. Is it unrealistic to probably assume that? I say no, because 2 of 14 is just like otherworldly bad. That's something that you don't see very much at any level of football. You don't see 2 of 14. So is it unfair? Absolutely. You scored 24 points, put up 340 yards of offense. You scored 50 plus points in the first 2 weeks, haven't turned the football over, and you're still 0-2. But if you were just even halfway better there, you probably win the football game. So I'm going to put that one on the offense because I think they're capable of it. I'm not sure the defense is capable of being much better because I don't think they're that good. I think they're one of the more overrated units in all of football. But I think the offense is capable of making that leap. So that's why I'm going to put it on them.
Yeah, I get it. I do. I mean, from a singular moment perspective, like that's why I selected that. But you want to know what the longest play from scrimmage was for the for the Chargers?
What was it?
A 15-yard run from Josh Kelly. That's their
Wait.
longest play from scrimmage. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. No, that's not correct. I combined 2 different stat lines. Never
Gotcha.
mind. Yeah. Because that didn't make sense anyway. But so but no, seriously, like they had a few different chunk plays in the passing game, but like it's all making Herbert work so hard for it too. And I don't know. The story of the first half for me, I honestly didn't even have something good for this. I basically leaned on you for this, and you said that the balance of the Chargers' offensive attack between running and passing. I mean, I guess that's fine. Nothing really impressed me on either side, aside from some decent defensive play, but they still scored. right? The Chargers put up 14 points in the first half. So it's like I can't even say that the Titans defense was this incredible force that defined the first half. So I just didn't have a good way to summarize what happened there.
Right.
And I guess you could put it that way. So talk more about the balance of the Chargers in the first half.
Well, I just thought they did a really good job of getting everybody involved. And like, what do I mean by that? I mean, they have two first round picks at receiver. And then you have a guy like Keenan Allen, and then you got I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but like Josh Palmer's there. They're working Josh Palmer in, and I think they do Kellen Moore, and then even Lombardi before him did a great job of getting the running backs incorporated. So I thought they did a great job of spreading the ball out. I mean, look, if you look at the target share, this is for the whole game, but it really started in the first half. Keenan Allen had 10 targets, 8 receptions. Mike Williams, 13 targets, 8 receptions. Gerald Everett, 3 for 3. Stone Smart, 1 for 1. Dotson's 2 for 2. Josh Palmer, 5 targets, 3 receptions. Quentin Johnson, which is very interesting because I thought it was a bad pick. I didn't think they fit very well because you already have a guy that does something extremely similar to Quentin Johnson and Mike Williams, and Mike Williams is better at it. But that's neither here nor there. You paid both your big time receivers, then you drafted another one, and he only gets 2 targets for 1 reception for 7 yards, that's another conversation. But imagine the Zay Flowers on type in that offense next to those Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. That's what
How
my pick
about
was.
Jordan Addison?
Yeah,
How about
either one of those guys is perfect.
Because I don't
Perfect.
even think they have a plan for Zay Flowers, just the way that Baltimore does. So I'm not sure that I would have been like, that's the guy you need to take. But to leave Jordan Addison on the board at this point, it's insane to me. I mean, look, you keep talking. I'm gonna look up the comparative stats between these two players over 2 weeks. And I know it's just 2 weeks,
Right.
but I'm making a point. But
No,
go ahead.
no, but listen, I think when it's this clear of a discrepancy, it's more than okay to talk about it because the Baltimore Ravens have a very distinct plan for Zay Flowers. He has a very clear role in that offense, and barring any injury or any super regression that would be incredibly unforeseen, he's going to be the number one receiver for that team this year, and he's going to have a hell of a career. On the other hand, Quentin Johnson, you already had a guy, honestly, 2 guys who fit the mold of what he does well. He's a 50-50 ball, deep ball guy, which is what Mike Williams does at an exceptional level. And he's an intermediate guy who can get you on some comebacks, some quick game that might, he gets some yak and he breaks a couple tackles and gets some yards to first down. And that's what Keenan Allen does, arguably better than any receiver in the NFL. So what he's good at and what he excels at, you have very clear defined roles. Not only that, you pay top dollars to bring those guys back. It would be a different situation if you were like, they were cheap and in a serious decline and you needed to, have something to explode the offense a little bit. But he doesn't fit that role, in my opinion. And, I have a guy, I believe his name's Stephen Hogland. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his last name, but he covers the Chargers, and he does a good job. And he tweeted out about 35, 40 minutes ago that Quentin Johnston's running open a lot. We have to find a way to get the ball to him. But I'm like, listen, I'm looking at the offense. I don't think the efficiency is the problem here. Like, they're doing very well. They're not turning the ball over. They're scoring 25-plus points a game. I'm just not sure that the plan is conducive to getting him the rock right now. If you have Keenan Allen open, I'm not going to work back to my second or third read just because he's running open on the backs. It's just football just doesn't work that way. So while it may look like he's open and he's running free, I think the plan is poor for him. And like you said, you go ahead and give me the stats here, but it just doesn't seem like that was a great pick, and it's showing right now.
So in his first 2 games, he has combined for 3 catches for 16 yards. That includes 1 catch for a 2-yard loss. Jordan Addison has 7 receptions for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns. And it's not like he's the number 1 option, right?
Yeah.
It's about what he brings to the table, how pro ready he is, where they are in the building of their offense, and the plan for what he is, who he's going to be. It's almost like the offensive coordinator and the GM did not sit down and have a conversation and be like, we need to prioritize this guy because this is how I'm going to use him. Because 2 weeks in it, he's a complete afterthought, right? Like Herbert doesn't even look at him.
And it's not like the offense is particularly struggling to where you have to find a way to get this guy integrated. Like, if it happens, it'd be great, but the offense is doing very well. They're not turning the football over. They're scoring points. Herbert is being extremely efficient. So, uh, yeah, man, it's a tough situation there. But like I said, that was the story of the first half, just the balance. And hopefully they can try to work Quentin Johnson into it more because they're extremely balanced everywhere else. And
Mhm.
even though the Titans did a great job run defense stopping the run in the second half, I thought early they did a really good job of trying to establish that. And I think it kind of played hand in hand with what they do offensively and building off of the run, especially in a Kellen Moore style offense.
Yeah, I agree. So the story of the second half for me was the Chargers defense just straight up getting gashed. And this is an offense that at its best for Tennessee thrives off of efficiency, right? And this
Right.
was an example of a very, very efficient day for Ryan Tannehill. I mean, he went 20 of 24 for 246 yards and a touchdown, right? Like that is high level efficiency.
Right.
10.3 yards per reception or per completion, I guess is exactly what it breaks down to. And he did take a number of sacks as well, and that's something that he's always done. But Tannehill is not this dynamic player who's just slinging it all over the field. And then you look at who they have. You got Derrick Henry going for 25 carries for 80 yards. And that's not this ridiculously explosive running game either. And then you got Tajay Spears for 8 for 49. And it's like these guys are talented, but Derrick Henry is clearly slowing down at this point. You can see that. It's not a great offensive line. Traylon Burks is their most explosive player, and he had 3 catches for 76 yards. His long was 70. So that means that he had his 2 other receptions were 2 catches for 6 yards, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, there is nothing about this that's built that you should be getting these chunk plays. But when you go down the list of all the long, and this doesn't even include every chunk play because it's just their longest play. Derrick Henry, 23-yard rush, longest play. Tajay Spears, 14-yard rush, longest play. Ryan Tannehill, 12-yard rush, longest rushing play. So just straight off breaks, that's 3 explosive plays. And then you go over to the passing game. You got Burks for 70. You got Chris Moore for 49. You got Chigakonkwo for 20. And then however other many are split in there. It's like, how can you be giving up all these explosive plays to the Tennessee Titans offense? I just don't think we're going to see them do this against many teams, let alone the majority of this all coming in the second half against a supposedly talented defense. Sorry, I doubt there's any Chargers fans listening to this at this point because we're being pretty confrontational about it, I guess is the way that you could say it. But it's outright bad. I mean, in your opinion, why is this happening?
I mean, listen, there's not many football reasons that I could sit here and point to. Um, on paper, and I hate this expression, but on paper, they have everything you need to be a successful defense. They have the personnel, they have the pass rushers up front. Joey Bosa actually had 2 sacks today in limited reps, so I thought he did a good job getting established today, or yesterday, excuse me. I thought that Derwin James, he's a good playmaker on the back end. Jason Jackson had a better game than he's had. I think they played better than they have played for the most part. It's just when it mattered, when it was time to have those clutch plays. Like I said, the first game that we talked about, the Panthers and the Saints. There's about 5 plays in every ball game that change the outcome of the game. I feel like 4 of those plays were made by the Titans, and you have to bite that. I think that even on the last drive, they did a great job. The Chargers, that is, of driving the ball and having a chance to go win the football game at the end, and then they stall out. They give up some bad blitz pickup, not being efficient with getting the ball in and out of bounds. That probably cost the team a little bit in the second half, and instead of kicking the field goal to go in overtime, probably could have had a chance to win that game. I don't know, maybe if, but I'm not going to put it on the offense, like I said, because they did their job to at least get the game to overtime. You just can't give up those explosives, like you said, to that offense. And more importantly, I don't think that in the second half, the blitz packages were good enough. You have to be able to send pressure and confuse that young offensive line. The offensive line is like they're not world beaters anymore. They used to have one of the better offensive lines in the National Football League. Not world beaters anymore. Derrick Henry actually did a solid job. I mean, I think he said 12 for 85 and a touchdown. He had a good game. He didn't have a Derrick Henry like monster game, so you did a
25
decent
for 80.
25 for 80. Tajay Spears had 49, I believe, something around
Mhm.
there. So you did a decent job. I mean, you would like to give up less than 120 in rushing, but considering who you're playing and their identity, you can live with that 100%.
Yeah.
So it's just the way that you have to be clutch getting off the field. Um, creating more turnovers. You didn't create enough turnovers. You just didn't play up to the standard that your guru head coach has probably set for you guys and what we expect from you when you have. I mean, I can't. You're the cap guy, but I think they have like 4 guys making over 15 million on that defense per year annually. It might be more than that. Like Bosa,
Yeah.
Mack, J.C. Jackson, Derwin James. I'm not even getting to the rest of the guys, but they have some
Mhm.
massive contracts on that defense, and you can't have that. You're a defensive head coach. You have some of the most expensive defensive players in the National Football League. You spent where was Thule drafted? I believe he was drafted in the second round. You spent a high second round pick on another defensive end who's actually probably playing better than the 2 older guys right now. So you've invested so much into this defense. You have to find a way. I don't know what it is personnel wise. I don't know what it is scheme wise. Whatever it is, you have to find it out, and find it out quick because you're playing. They played the Vikings this week, I believe. You're playing a Vikings team who's also fighting for their season, essentially. I hate to say that a season's over. This is must-win game in week 3, but it's absolutely a must-win game in week 3, simply for the fact that he has to maintain. Brandon Staley, that is, he has to. If you want to keep your job, you have to start winning some football games here. They've invested too much money into the defense. They've invested too much money into the offense. It just made Justin Herbert the highest-paid quarterback ever before Joe Burrow came back from his deal. There's been too much investment and too much bail given to you already to keep getting pass after pass after pass. I think it's absolutely a must-win for Brandon Staley and the Los Angeles Chargers in week 3.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at just the payment and the draft investment in all these guys. I mean, like you said, you've got the 4 guys that you mentioned as all being over 15 million. Now, I'm not sure exactly what they're paying Khalil Mack right now because he may be a little bit lower on the back end of his deal, but his original contract would have been pretty high, like 20. I think he was the first one to go over 20 million per year as a defensive player. So he's still kind of riding out the back end of that. But regardless, you still traded a second and third round pick for him, put a third round pick in for Asante Samuels, or maybe it was a second round pick actually for him. Second round pick for Tuli Tuipulotu, first round pick for Kenneth Murray. Like, you got all these guys that you pay, and they've spent a fair amount of money on their defensive front to the
Right.
interior guys, but not singularly, but
Oh yeah,
in
SJD has a pretty
total.
bad contract for his production.
Yeah.
That's a terrible contract on the books for his production. Can you pull that one up because I think that's
Yeah, I
a
can pull it up.
bad deal. I think he's making like 10 million or something. If I'm
Nah,
not
he's not
mistaken.
making 10 million, but I can look it up. But regardless, like it's just not great. Like the amount that you've put in financially, draft pick wise, and then hiring a defensive coach as your head coach. It is let's see. Where is he? Jason Jackson, Clint Mack, Joey Bosa, Mike Williams, Corey Lindsley, Keenan Allen, Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day is getting. I can tell you 1 second.
And I'll be interested in the guarantees too, because
8 million per year,
come on,
fully
man.
guaranteed money, 16.5 million at signing.
That's a terrible deal for the production. Come on, like that's just even stuff like that. That's a terrible deal for the production that you're getting from the guy. Like I think they have some terrible contracts on the books. The personnel is overrated on paper. They all look really good at the time, but they haven't turned out, and they haven't done well cutting their losses. You just have to accept what it is at some point, and self-preservation has to kick in. It hasn't kicked in at all for this organization. I think it's going the opposite way. They just made, Joe Lombardi the scapegoat, and I don't think the situation changed much of anything. You still have a very, I wouldn't say limited offense, but they're still not giving a ton of explosives down the field. The identity of the offense is more or less the same. The production on the offense is more or less the same. and the defense hasn't gotten any better. So we have to start looking at the head guy.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's pretty clear, and too many chokes in big moments. And even today, it's like
Right.
you look at when you look at what they did against the Dolphins last week, like against just about any team, that offensive production should be good enough to win you a game. And the Dolphins are very good, but we just saw them not go for 500 yards. So maybe you need the defense to step up here at some point. And then against the Titans, 24 points against the Tennessee Titans defense is legitimately like a good day, especially without turnovers, like you mentioned. And you should be able to win a game with that against an offense that's lackluster. So I don't know. Let's move on because we've dug deep enough into it. I wanted to talk about the Chargers the first 2 weeks because they're a team that had such high expectations. But if they don't quickly churn out some wins and get themselves relevant again, we probably won't talk about them again for a little while. Unless I want to mention, however, Jordan Addison stacks up against Quentin Johnson when they play next week. But moving on to the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so I remember what it is. I just checked. There's no team that's 2-0 in the division, but the Bengals are 0-2 in the division already, which is brutal.
Yeah.
So Ravens go into Cincinnati and get out with a win. Big day for Lamar Jackson. I think getting to see him really, really get comfortable in the new system was pretty cool. He played really, really well. The pivotal moment for me in this game was Joe Burrow's pick to Geno Stone, because that was a large run back. I think it was like a 36-yard return, and the ball was caught in the end zone. It put the Ravens in very good field position, and I think that was. I'm trying to remember. I think I watched so many games of football. I'm starting to forget the exact situation of everything, but that was, I think, in the third quarter, and at a point when the Ravens had the lead, and it gave them another scoring opportunity. So I'm pretty yeah, okay. So that put them behind a little bit farther, and then they just never quite caught up. But so that was my pivotal moment. How did you feel about it?
I thought that was a huge moment in the game, but I think my personal pivotal moment was I believe it was like 60 air yards from Lamar to Zay Flowers to flip the field. It was a 13-10 game in the third quarter, and that play kind of really flipped the momentum. Even though I think they brought it a little bit closer, and um, the Bengals had a chance probably to win that game late. Well, I wouldn't say they had a chance to win the game late. I thought the Ravens did a fantastic job of closing the game out when they did get the ball back, and they needed to implement some 4-minute offense and really kind of bleed the clock down. But I just thought that flipped the entire momentum of the game, man, and it gave the Ravens offense so much confidence. I think they've been playing with a little bit of confidence already. But man, when you see that kind of play, and Lamar's throwing it down 60 yards now, air yards on a rope, and Zay Flowers is going up between two guys to make a play like that, I think it just gave them so much confidence, and they carried that momentum over for the rest of the game. They played very efficiently in that second half and put points on the board, extended drives. Lamar did a hell of a job getting first downs with his feet, but I just think that moment right there gave them a shock of life that they needed, because it was starting to linger a little bit. You had that little lead, and it's still within range, and you're like stuff get a little bit anxious, and the defense might give up a play, and then you get more tight on offense, and then every play on offense becomes bigger than it actually is, and you start to press a little bit. I thought that was a huge play for settling down the Baltimore Ravens on both sides of the ball. So that was my pivotal moment, and very bad interception part on Burrow's part, though. It's just so uncharacteristic of Burrow. It's like hard for me to, even though it's absolutely a pivotal moment in the game, it's hard for me to hold those to the same degree of importance as I hold like a play like that, because I don't know how many plays like that I'm going to get from Lamar to Zay stretching the field like that. I know how many times I'm going to get a mistake like that from Burrow. You're only probably going to get that every one time in the game. So while it was important, absolutely, it was probably a 14-point swing there at the point of the game. I don't know if the Ravens scored on that possession. My memory doesn't serve me correct right now, but I know Joe Burrow's only going to give me one of those moments a game. I think the only game we've ever seen him like just completely melt down and have a terrible turnover game was last year against the Steelers, game one, right? That was the Steelers. I believe it was the Steelers game one, where he threw 4 interceptions in that one game, if my memory serves me correct. But other than that, you don't see Joe Burrow have those silly mistakes where he's just getting completely outsmarted and throwing it right to a defender. So it's like you said, it's a hell of a play, pivotal moment. I'm not downgraded in at all. It's just I know Joe Burrow's going to come back and give his team a chance to win, and he actually did that. He threw some nice balls to T. Higgins in the red zone and scored a couple of touchdowns and really put the pressure on the Baltimore Ravens. So I think Burrow started to find his groove in that second half. He played some really bad ball the first 6 quarters of this season, but that second half, I think he started to take a little bit of a step in coming back to the old Joe Burrow that we've come to love. But I don't know if you know anything. Did they say he's going to be out this week? I've seen some stuff with this calf for.
With Burrow,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think
Okay.
I mean, he finished the game.
Yeah, he finished the game playing well too.
You could see that he was not nearly as mobile as he normally is, right? Now, all the issues with the accuracy and his inability to complete the ball, that would basically vanished when the weather got better. To me, like in my opinion, where he's just throwing the ball like over guys' heads, he's throwing the ball at guys' feet. That was an issue with the slickness of the ball in the rain, and we didn't see that at all. He put the ball on in some incredibly tight window spots, especially the one on the touchdown to Higgins where he's escaping the pocket and he just flips the ball. That was really impressive. But the movement skills are not as bursty nearly at all as we're used to seeing from him. That you could see. I can't find exactly when in the game the shot to Zay Flowers happened, but yeah, it was a big play.
It was 13-10. I remember it's third quarter, 13-10.
So is that, I guess, yeah, okay, there it is, 52 yards. So it was actually like two simultaneous plays because Burrow throws the pick to Geno Stone on the very first drive off of halftime. Bengals get the ball. They're driving down the field. He throws a pick.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 58-yard drive, and then he throws the interception. Gotcha. It's a 36-yard return, and the very next play is the shot to Zay Flowers down the field.
Gotcha.
So I guess you can combine that maybe even together, because that goes from giving the Bengals an opportunity to take the lead 17-13 potentially, or at least tie the game.
Right.
And then you give them the ball back. They just cruise down the field, score. So that was a pivotal moment. We can combine ours together for awesome. a 2-play pivotal moment. Then my story of the first half was I just kind of looked at this game like,